And hello everyone, it's driving lesson number 8 and I'm going to give a quick overview of what's happened in this lesson and my brain's thoughts. Okay, what I'm realizing is I'm asking fewer questions with this instructor, and the reason I'm asking fewer questions is I'm realizing that the questions he answers aren't in the detail I want them. And maybe it's the type of questions that I'm asking. It's probably the type of questions that I'm asking that isn't bringing out the detail that I would need. And a second point was that he sometimes gets agitated with the questions I ask. Or if I ask a question or elaborate on a question more than one time or two times, he starts to get agitated. And I just set my objective as I'm going to the driving lessons to pay attention to the road and follow the law, go to the place I want to go, directions, and drive safe, but go as fast as possible. Right? You go as fast as necessary while following the signs, right? 60, kilometers an hour max. While staying safe, right? It might say 60 kilometers an hour, but if there's a scenario where there's example where you need to slow down, then you slow down even if the max is 60 kilometers an hour. But you don't use that for that only for one example. You might use it when you're parked and you want to get out of the parking. In some situations you're going to get out of the parking slowly. In some situations you want to get out of the parking fast. And that's the principle, the isomorphic principle that you would use for different scenarios. You adapt based on the situation. And that is something I'm learning. And I think I'm learning more about that because I'm not asking questions. I'm realizing, yes, answering questions can help me, but not answering questions might even prove better as a better benefit in some situations. Because my brain is actually thinking about it, and it's not I'm asking, hey, give me the answer. No, I'm thinking about it. And sometimes you get the answer yourself and you test it on the road while you're doing this. Which I've been doing. Example, last week I was doing the reversing and he was getting agitated. Right? I was asking him, okay, what's the reason you did this and that and this and that? And maybe it's the type of questions I'm asking. Probably, maybe they're obvious to his brain, but not obvious to mine. And since, let's assume every student listens to what he says the first time, then in my case, if I don't listen the first time, then I would be viewed as the problem, right? And that could induce the agitation that he exerts On me. On me. On exerts with the words he uses. There's nothing on me but with the words. And tone of voice. Acoustic correlates. Some words you say them with a high tone, or you call it how it is, right? You can say mad, not mad. And I'm thinking about what I was thinking before. The reason. Let me see my notes. Let me look at my notes real quick. What I wrote down after another student went to drive me back to my house with the instructor in the car. Everything I wrote down, I said so far. It's agitated in some scenarios, but which scenarios? And then objective to decode, but the objective is to drive, and that was the objective, to drive, follow the laws, follow the laws, the directions and speed limits. Then remember actually the first thing was the reason you're on the road. You're trying to get to a destination, using the road, the car as a transportation to transport you to where you want to go, and you're doing that because you think it's more efficient than not doing that. That's the objective, and now there are laws to be safe and not kill anyone or yourself. Or cause, you can say, obstruction. You want it to be smooth, and you do that with the lowest latency possible, right? While following the laws. If it says, hey, in this road you have to go 30 or 60, then you follow that, but you do it as the lowest time possible, and you adapt based on the scenario always. And that's the objective. That's the first objective. Now the second objective was the reason you're asking questions to the instructor. You have to ask yourself that, because there could be some situations where my brain starts to flip and look at this from a feelings perspective, right? Well, why is this? Not, I would never say why. But I would say, how is this person? How is his brain? I would use the word brain. How is his brain getting agitated and everything? And sometimes the brain can switch into, even when saying that, being, how is this? It's like it's personal, but I'm telling you, nothing is personal. That doesn't exist. That's actually that's the perception from your brain, from the limited data you have in your brain. But in reality, it's just sound waves coming out of his vocal cords, out of his mouth, and based on the data he has on his brain. That's all it is. It's very simple. And you're outputting information or asking questions based on the data on your brain. It's two brains, two datas. There's no feelings. Feelings don't exist. That's it. It doesn't exist. It's data in your brain. And you have to always look at it from that perspective, and you have to always remind yourself, hey, this is my objective. And yes, you might have an objective, and you might have stated your objective, but then you go in the scenario and, oh, guess what, now you're forgetting what your objective is, and your brain might start to lose the exact reason you're doing all of this. And that's common because you have your objective, you set the objective, now you're exploring, you're testing. Okay, this is all biological. You have the objective, then you're testing and exploring, and now, okay, now you experienced the test. Right? Even though you might have not set the hypotheses and the success metric, but you're still doing the exploration, right? And maybe that's something you should test. You should test, okay, let me write down hypotheses and the success metric. Maybe I'm going to do this for only this next lesson, and the next lesson I won't do that. You test how it is, and this applies to every single thing. That's the scientific method. Right? Observation, questioning, hypotheses, test, feedback loop. Okay, and the reason you started all of this was because of an objective. And the objective only came because you have those data points in your brain to have that objective. And what's the reason you have the objective? There has to be some discomfort for you to have the objective. The only reason you're eating is because you feel hungry. Hungry causes discomfort. Okay, let's keep it on food right now. You might also say, hey, but I'm not hungry, but I still want to eat that. Exactly, that's the second part, that's dopamine. Then you have dopamine, hey, and now you want to do this because it gives you dopamine, but guess what? If you don't do it, you would be uncomfortable. It would be uncomfortable not to do it, and therefore, the dopamine, you're still uncomfortable if you don't do that dopamine task. Therefore, it's still uncomfort comes before the dopamine, do you understand? But you could say it's a different discomfort. Because with hunger, if you don't eat with that discomfort that you have, well, you're eventually going to die. But if you don't eat, let's say you're on a full stomach and you have discomfort, and we can say discomfort of dopamine, well, that's a totally different discomfort. It's still discomfort, but it's not discomfort that if you don't do it you would die, right? But it's still felt as discomfort because it's in your brain, it's data, right? There's no such thing as hardwired. What are the hardwired things? And you have to define hardwired first of all. And are you talking about the biological structure of your brain and the different neural pathways and how they're connected and the different parts and how they connect with all your body's components, right? Your limbs, heart, for the blood moving through the veins, arteries, and you have your tendons, muscles, right? And how, example, automatic stuff, example, going to the bathroom. You could say it's automatic. And what's the reason those are automatic? Those are needed to live. You need to poop and pee to live. They're excreting the waste from your body. You have to breathe to excrete the waste out from your lungs and to distribute, I think, oxygen to the blood and circulate your body. I'm not sure about that, but you need the oxygen to live, right? And what else? I think we talked about the body, and we're talking about the body because we're talking about how discomfort stems. Where does discomfort stem from? How do you have an objective? Well, it's from discomfort, and discomfort comes from biology. Everything is biology. you're not going to start coding, hey, I want to start coding. That never happens. Right? And if you have that, that's going to be based on motivation, not actual discomfort. And guess what? Next week you're going to stop coding 100%. It's not even a question, it's 100%. Unless, how would that not be true? Unless your brain is not hardwired but programmed, and that's conditioning, right? Psychologically conditioned to, let's say, set a target and just keep on doing that target that you set, but for no reason. That's not efficient, right? Even if you're doing something like coding, which could have a higher return of investment, but you still can't replicate your system, right? If you put your objective or something that's not efficient, you're still going to keep doing it, right? Unless you have some algorithm to stop when X happens, which can make your system efficient. There's different brains and different scenarios. You could start coding, hey, because billionaires, I know billionaires, every billionaire knows how to program. Okay, and I'm going to start programming. I'm not going to look into it. I just know that billionaires, X, Y, and Z, and my brain assigns high value to the billionaire's perspective. And I'm just going to start coding no matter what. I'm not going to evaluate mathematics, physics, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, biology, chemistry, economics. I think those are the subjects. And English and writing. I think those are the main subjects. I'm not going to look at that and decide, hey, what's the best computer science, which is over programming. Programming falls under computer science. I'm not going to look at those and decide, hey, what am I going to do? No, I'm just going to program, and I can decide what I'm going to do while I'm programming, because I know programming is a necessity, because every billionaire has it. And if I'm going to create something for me and be efficient as possible to prevent myself from dying and understanding the technical aspects, the technical things around me, to not experience technological bottlenecks and be efficient, then I'm just going to program. I'm going to learn from that. I'm going to do 2 hours every day, 6 hours every day. Okay, and I can do the rest of the 6 hours having my plan. You can. There's different scenarios, or you could plan everything from the beginning. Hey, I'm going to look at biology, chemistry, physics. I'm going to have my objective. What's my objective? My end goal, not dying. Okay. What industry is that? What is it on? Not what industry, right? That would be health. If you talk about it, that would be health. Health and could say health and medicine. And would you look at the job first, or the sector? You would look at the sector health, and or first would you look at what's already available? Probably that's the first thing you would do, and you would say, okay, what sector is that? Health, medicine, 100%. There's computer science because of the tools. Physics, 100%. And then you could see, okay, what skills do they constitute of this category? And it's probably physics, chemistry, biology, electrical, mechanical engineering, right? Mechatronics, computer science, which is all involved in that because you're programming that. And you'd say, okay, these are the subjects that I need to study. And right now, where I am right now, the facts, where am I right now? What does my brain know? What subject will bring me the closest to where I need to be? And that could be example programming, because I could even start working with with programming and make projects and sell them, and even go work with businesses, and I would learn from those businesses, and then I could create my own business much easier with all the other experiences, and I would have the connections as well. Right? If I work for 10 companies, successful companies, and let's say I work with them 2 months each and I quit exactly when I have their map and structure and their policies and everything. It's going to be very easy to have my own company. And let's say this company is in your own sector that you're doing. Now you even know the gaps in the market. And we're saying this to example, the company, you would need the money, let's say, to help you in the Living Forever objective, the Talos. Remember the Talos? I mentioned that in the last video. And the Talos we're talking about the Talos we're talking about the Living Forever. And that is always the objective. If you don't have anything that's causing you discomfort, that should always cause you discomfort, dying, no matter what it is. And that's whatever discomfort you're feeling, right? Someone could be berating you, coercing you. Every time you speak, you could be getting shut down. But first, before I even get into the debt and that's the higher constraint, you have to realize and you have to place the facts. Example, in my situation, when I ask a question, am I getting shut down all the time? No. Sometimes, yes. Would I ever want to be in that situation? No. If I know a person, a brain is programmed to do that based on the questions I'm asking, and let's say I've evaluated the questions I'm asking and there's a reason for me, I would need to update my questions because the information I could get from this person is X, Y, and Z. And did I say I updated them or didn't? I evaluated them. Actually, you see, even this, I'm drifting off of this. I need to copy what's my scenario? Factually, what's my scenario? Factually, I'm going to this instructor to learn the driving the car, and from all the instructors I messaged, that was the only one who answered. Actually, there were people who answered, but they weren't available for this summer. I would have to do that in July, which now it's June 27th, and it's already been a month and a half since I've been doing these lessons. It's been my 8th lesson, 8 weeks, and 8 weeks equals 56 days. Now, and as the instructor that I have, and you have to ask yourself, okay, as the only instructor, what was the reason you're driving in the first place? Right? What's the reason? Well, the first reason I wanted to drive was to get a job, to be able to drive to a job without, spending money on e-cabs, right? Around 20 euro each ride, or 9 euro, it depends where you're going to go work. It should be 18 euro a day, which you times that times 5, as you go Monday to Friday, that would be 90 euro, right? If you spend 18 every day, 10 times 5, 50, and 8 times 5, 40. That's 90 euro a week. Let's say you have 4 weeks, that's 260 euro minus the wage you're getting, right? And let's say it's 5 weeks, that's another 80, that would be 440. You would be spending 440, and let's say you're getting 1,500 a month, and we're spending 440. That's only, you're getting 1,060 a month, right? Which is decent, and let's say you work for 6 months and it's 460 euro times 6, which would be 2,760, right? Since we're doing 440 times 6, 4 times 6, 2,400, and then 6 times 40, 240, and that's 2,640, right? 2,640. You're missing out on 2,640, and with 2,640 I could buy a MacBook Air, for example. And guess what? Now I have two. I have a MacBook Pro and a MacBook Air. Now, is that useful to have this distributed system? It depends on your workflow and what objectives you have and what you're building. Right now that wouldn't be useful, therefore what would I use that money for? Well, you could go to America, which is around 700 euro, let's say from my country, 700 euro to go to a trip and back, and let's say an appointment with a dentist over there, and even staying there for 2 days. That would, let's say, round up to around 2,000. I'm only saying it rounds up to 1,000 because I calculated this beforehand, and this was around 2 months ago or 2 months ago, and it came at around 2,000 something, but I think that was calculated for 1 week. And okay, let's assume it's 100 euro a night. Let's say we're going to stay there for 3 nights, it's 300 euro. Let's say 700 euro to go to the flight, that's 1,000. Let's say the appointment is 400 total. That would be 1,400, but let's say you have to eat. Eating would put you at around 100 euro. And we were at 1.4, now it would be 1.5. 1.5k. And that would be a very, very high return of investment trip, right? You learned how to go abroad. Let's say you haven't went abroad, but now you've learned to go abroad. And in the beginning stages, those 2,400 could provide you with a high return of investment, right? When your brain hasn't experienced some of the processes. And that's all in the beginning, right? That's all in the beginning, because then 2,400 would be absolutely nothing, right? It's not linear. It's not linear. It's not binary. Multiple variations. It's all about balance. It's all about balance. What else? The lesson, right? What do we take from the car lesson, and what is our mindset? We have our mindset already, the objective that we are going to go to the lesson to, number 1, transportation to where we need to go. Number 2, we're going to transport our vehicle, and we're going to drive our vehicle while following the laws, speed limit and directions. And let's say rules, and we're only following them because it's considering death, okay? People dying. As you have to say, Therese, you're not going to follow something just because it's the law. You don't just follow something because it's the law. Never do that. But if you're hesitant and you have to make a decision based on not following the law or following the law, most likely you're going to want to follow the law if you, let's say you're hesitant about a decision. Since, okay, the law is peer reviewed, right? It's not one person who made the law, and it is an evolution. and for you to decide not to follow on the law based on the feelings on your brain, probably not the most efficient algorithm, right? You never want to follow what your brain is saying. You need to follow your objectives. That's what it is. You need to follow the objectives that you made, that you assigned when your brain was very clear on what it needs to get done, the reason it needs to get done, and how it's going to get done. And that's the reason you write everything down, because remember, your brain is a prediction machine. It isn't the truth engine. And this citing artificial intelligence. This I learned this from artificial intelligence, from ChatGPT. But it's true. Even it's commonly known. It's not you learn this from artificial intelligence, but it is commonly known that the brain isn't a prediction machine. It's very commonly known in health. The health industry is commonly known in science. Right? Prediction error, negative prediction, positive prediction. There are actual calculus formulas for these. Okay, mathematics. We have mathematics, neuroscience, biology. So many subjects. Right? This is the brain. It's connected to every limb in your body, part of your body. And there are formulas calculated to be able to measure or explain or understand this more effectively. And using these formulas, remember, you can use these formulas for other situations in your life. Me learning about the prediction error, at first you understand that it's used in reinforcement learning, and artificial intelligence, even AI, is based on reinforcement learning. It adapts to what you're saying. It's on the keywords you're saying. Even though I shouldn't go deep into that because I'm not educated enough on that subject, but let's say a structure for you that you could look into. For example, reinforcement learning. There was a book that came out in reinforcement learning, and I think it was in 2018. And I'm not sure exactly on how it evolved to came to be, but I think it was based on psychology and for computers. We listed the objective for the car, and okay, let's now two brains. Okay, this is the objective. Okay, now let's work our way down. Scenario. What's the reason you ask questions? Okay, remember, what's causing the discomfort? The source. What's the source? Always go to the source. That's the least amount of noise, right? Information theory. You want to learn about noise and understanding more about the source, right? Information theory and the source. Actually, I got the term the source. I used to, I think, use the term central node before, or I think I used to use, I think this concept that I had was, okay, where's my data coming from? When I was in the getting information from the internet, where's my data coming from? How do I know this data is better than this data, X, Y, and Z? Where's it coming from? Primary, I think secondary, then tertiary. How do I outlined, okay, observations, a scientific method. And then what did I actually do? I think I asked AI GPT about this, and I think that's what I did. I asked GPT about this, and I had the links, and then I think I got an overview from him and just learned from that, from GPT. But then now, even around a month ago, actually less than a month ago, about 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, when doing writing, right, going to the through the courses of MIT for writing, you realize, hey, this is a common thing where they talk about getting your sources from trustworthy people. The first I heard this on OpenStax, for example. That's an open source. I think it's based in California, where it's an open source website where they have books for different subjects, and I'm doing physics on that, the university level physics. And I'm mostly skimming through it to get the structure first, and then when my brain needs a certain chapter to solve a problem, it can refer to that and then go deeper into it. I think that's a strategy that is very important, that you could, example, read through the chapters, understand the terms for the chapters, and let's say the main thing, actually just know the terms and its use case, its potential use case. You just know the term and the potential use case, and then you skip to the next chapter. And the reason you do that is when you have an actual problem in real life, right? You want to build a company, and even a whatever company, and I would say software company is most efficient software as a service. Actually, what's most efficient depends on your scenario, right? And your current skill levels, that's what's most efficient. And I'm assuming that you would have the same objective as not dying, since that 100% is the Talos objective. That's 100% the most efficient. 100%. There's nothing more efficient than that. Because when you achieve that, you can do whatever, you can decide whatever you want, whenever. Because 1 billion years later versus 100 years later, it doesn't matter. No difference. Except maybe the difference in the universe. But from a dying perspective, there's no difference. And what was I talking about? Dying. Objective car, dying, not dying. You don't want to die. Who wants to die? No one wants to die. That's actually a lie. Dying. Yeah, as I said before, right? If you die, everything you would have done would have been useless for you, right? And that's what's going to cause you discomfort. Whatever position you're in, you remember that, hey, you're going to die. If you don't do something about it, that's going to drive you to do something, because if you don't do something, then you're going to die. And if you're dead, then it's worse than what you're feeling right now, probably, right? Unless you're getting tortured. But even then, you still have hope when you're getting tortured, versus zero hope when you're dead, unless someone revives you, right? Maybe that could happen, but never think like that because you don't want to depend on no one. Never. Now let's start closing the video. Okay. Objective. And now we listed the objective. Now what's the second step? The source of discomfort, which was what I was talking about before, but I went on a little side tangent. The source, and I was talking about where I got there was multiple steps, right? Which to explain the full extent of the chain from where I learned about the source, using the source, I would need to write it down and show it to you and show you the steps, because that would be easier to understand and it wouldn't get lost in this side tangent that I had. Okay, the source, you find the source, and what was the source of discomfort? Hey, you're asking the question, and then the instructor shuts your question down, or starts to get agitated, right? Really, what you have to do in that situation is observe. That's all you do. You observe. You do the scientific method. It's very simple, and this applies to every single thing in every activity you do. Every single activity you do. Work, not work. Thoughts, not thoughts. How the scientific method, you observe. You have to observe first. If you don't observe, you're using your own brain's data as a heuristic to interpret what you have. And what happens when you do that? Emotions. What's the reason you see people, let's say, arguing all the time, right? A couple arguing. Or even, let's say, on the road, right? You have someone getting mad. You're just doing what your brain how do you say it? You just receive data, right? You just receive data, and you're doing the first, you could say feeling, but how is that really in the brain, right? With amygdala, I'm sure it regulates the emotions in your brain, but to keep this simple, or simple, that's probably because I don't understand it clearly myself, but I know it's a heuristic, right? It's a heuristic. Heuristic is a commonly used word in psychology and behavioral economics, right? In psychology, I got learned about heuristics, or validated heuristics. I think I learned about heuristics with ChatGPT when I was learning about prediction errors and neuroscience. And I learned about validated heuristics when I was listening, not reading, but listening to Influence. It was from Robert Cialdini, which is a psychotherapist. Influence something. Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion by Robert Cialdini. Yes. And what's the heuristic, right? It's the algorithm your brain executes from a particular data point, particular, you could say even feeling, Example, if you're getting angry, example, yeah, we have to give an example. If you're saying it's not measurable, then you don't understand. It's 100% like that. If you can't measure it, if you can't explain it, you don't know how to measure it, right? And let's say is someone getting angry. How does someone get angry? Think about the scenario that you have had in your own brain's experience. Usually, someone gets angry when they have this data point or this right, a data point. You can call it this concept in their brain, this data point that they understand in their brain. For example, this could be an example of getting angry and explaining it to someone, but that someone doesn't understand what you're saying, even though to your brain it's clearly very obvious, because your brain has processed this information and probably has a lot of relationships with this information, and now you're outputting it, right? You are giving that payload, outputting it sound waves, right, from your vocal cords, giving it, and you're just telling it to someone, right? And they're listening, and they still can't understand you. And let's not keep it at there. Let's step forward, further, and you're only telling him something because, let's say, there's a certain action from this person that if he understands, it would benefit you. Right? Let's say you're telling someone to do something, and the reason you're telling him to do something is for a need that you want. Let's say something like that, for a need that you want that would cause you discomfort if you wouldn't achieve, right? Would cause you discomfort if you wouldn't achieve, and what do you do? No, this is, I'm probably saying this and it's probably not relating. If someone is watching it, it wouldn't be relating to someone really, because I haven't give a concrete example, but I'm maybe objection handling something that doesn't exist. I'm objection handling my own perception from my own brain of what it thinks from what I'm saying. What I was saying is that, okay, someone is thinking about something, needs something, and now it's a 1, 2, 3. Wait. 1, 2, and 3. A person saying something to this person, and now to this need that this person wants, right? So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. And what he's trying to say isn't being understood by that person, remember, because it's not a person, it's a brain, and the brain has to process the information that you process. The only reason this person wants this, okay, remember, this is number 4, this is number 1. The reason number 1 wants number 4, and remember, the person is number 3, the receiver. This is the actor, this is the receiver. This is the payload number 2, actor number 1, receiver number 3, desire number 4. The only reason the actor number 1 wants the desire number 4 is because there's a need, there's discomfort, okay, and that discomfort isn't felt, isn't processed by number 3, the receiver, the brain. It isn't processed by him, by that brain. It doesn't have the need. It doesn't have the need for number 4. It hasn't processed, let's say, number 4, the desire. It has connected webs to it, right? Nodes, edges to. I want to excuse myself for doing this. I will never do that again. Now, number 4 connected with the webs, with the edges. Again, I stop doing this with the webs, with the edges connected and connected to the brain, number one, the actor, to their brain. And it makes perfect sense for them to have that desire. And let's say number three, the receiver, let's say now he's aware of this desire. Let's say it's number four. And let's say, okay, let's say you, to understand this desire, you would need, let's make up three numbers, number 10, 11, and 12. Let's say you would need number 10, 11, and 12 to understand this desire. To understand this desire, you must understand 10, 11, and 12. Okay, and let's say number one, the actor, 100%, he understands 10, 11, and 12 because he has a desire for number four. But this person, number three, let's say he's only aware of number four, but isn't aware of number 10, 11, and 12. Therefore, he's not going to understand the desire, the need for that desire. And that's the reason there's not going to be communication, proper communication. And you know where this comes from, the problem actually? It mostly comes from the person, number one, the actor. Alright, remember, the only reason he's connected to number three is from the payload he gave to number three, right, the receiver. Therefore, really, it's the payload of number one, it's the message. The message wasn't, let's say, clear enough, or right, it didn't contain enough information to be able to unlock or show and unlock the awareness and understanding for awareness and understanding from number three, the receiver, to understand 10, 11, and 12, to understand the desire number four, right? And that is the model, right? We can use that model as a structure, and then you can start to test it in real life. Hey, does this apply to this? How can this structure be improved? That's an MVP structure that you can use. Right, and what you could do is write this down and apply it to any scenario you have. Right, you say you have a scenario and you can't understand it, and hey, you need to understand this scenario to move forward where you are right now and to where you want to be. Right, you can use the structure, have the scientific method, right, observation, ask question, hypotheses, and test. And to add to that, from what I use in my mental models and to process the data, right, you have to list the facts. You have to list your current state. Right now, first, you would need your objective, right? Where's the objective that you want to be? And usually, right, you could have an objective right now before it's writing down the facts, and then when you write down the facts, your objective could change. That makes sense. Your brain just processes new data and new information. But it's usually the only reason you're feeling a type of way is because you have discomfort, and discomfort comes based on the data your brain is receiving. And the only reason you're feeling discomfort, hey, what are the activities you're doing? And so maybe it is the facts you have to write down first. You have to write down the facts. Okay, where's this discomfort coming from? What action did I do to feel this discomfort? But you write down the action. You don't write down your hypotheses of the reason you think this happened. Those aren't facts. Okay, those are your assumptions. That's your hypotheses, and that's very inefficient for you. That's very inefficient to do that. You need to write down the facts first, because if you don't write down the facts first, then what's going to happen is you're going to have this free energy in your brain, right? Your, I think it's called an amygdala back or prefrontal cortex back and forth, right? Because you think with your brain, then you're feeling this emotion going to the amygdala and then to your brain. I forgot the exact term, but I got this term, I think, from artificial intelligence as well. I think I was explaining the neuroscience behind this stuff, and they cited that information from probably some research paper, right? But if you don't have the facts, then you don't have a boundary. If you don't have a boundary, it's an open system. If it's an open system, you can't optimize your system. That's the model that you need. You cannot optimize your system if it's an open system, right? You need to have some boundary. You can have something closed in an open system, right? Since you can have that. And what's an example of that, right? Open system, let's say universe, and you're saying, I'm going to have this closed system where I'm going to eat this food versus the other food. That's a closed system, right? You're having a binary action. And these mental models are important, and mostly important the beginning stage. They're still very, very important in the later stage, but what I mean by that is once your brain processes this information, and by processing it I mean actually writing it down and going over them or experiencing from real world experience from any task you do, from any activity, and it gets ingrained in your brain, right? And then it just becomes a heuristic. But is there a risk to forget about this, even though you know it heuristically, your brain knows it heuristically? Yes, there is a risk to forget about it, right? Let's say the only reason you know about this is because an activity you're doing and you're not aware of this, your brain isn't aware of this, then what's going to happen when you stop doing that activity and you stop doing that behavior, and now you're experiencing a symptom from stopping that behavior, and now you don't know how to fix that symptom because you didn't understand that your previous behavior was the actual cause for not having that symptom, right? And you learn that from experience, right? That's very vague, and excuse me for even saying you learn that from experience. Everything is from experience. Eating is experience. Me talking is experience. Everything is experience. Everything your brain perceives is experience. Therefore, saying you learn that from experience really is not providing any valuable information, any valuable, actionable advice. Please excuse me for saying you learn that from experience. But you learn that from actually testing, okay, and being aware. You're being aware for being aware, right? And you don't do that just by being aware, because your brain, remember, right now your brain could remember, prediction machine, your brain is a prediction machine, it's not the truth engine. Right now your brain could feel, yes, I need to do this, I need to do that, but 100% the next day, your brain isn't going to have a reason for that. Okay, not 100%, it depends, it always depends, it's not binary. It might have a reason, it might not have a reason for that. Right now, maybe you're feeling motivated because you assigned, let's say, a reason, or maybe you didn't assign a reason, you're just motivated. But maybe the next day, then your brain forgets the reason, and now guess what? Now your brain doesn't know the reason it was doing the objective, and it stops doing it. And that's the reason it's a prediction machine, not a truth engine. If it was a truth engine, that's an analogy. We don't elaborate on an analogy, right? We get the structure. Okay, we get the structure. But what I said was, remember, it's a prediction machine, and the prediction machine, the data coming in. You have to define machine as well. Go on Google search and define what machine is. I'm not exactly sure what exact machine, the exact machine definition is a machine is a physical device with moving parts that uses power to perform or assist in human tasks. It's designed to transmit energy, direct motion, or modify forces to make physical work easier. The brain device uses power, right? The electrical signals, the electrons, through the neural pathways, and it does here, right? Assist in human tasks. It does the human action through your body, through everything in your body, through every part in your body. And this we would probably get the etymology to understand better how this word evolved, but that might go over the diminishing returns, and let's get back to what we were talking about. Talking about what were we talking about? Mental models, systems, the driving lessons. Remember this video was, I started talking about the driving lessons, but now we're at a point where I said I was closing the video around 25 minutes ago. Let's actually close it now. Remember the objective from the beginning? We said you're driving the car to go to a destination. It's a transport vehicle, and go search what transport is and the definition for that, because it's the same as like transmitting, and we know transmitting is something that moves, right? And it's the prefix, and it comes from some Latin root or Greek root, most probably, and it's something that maybe moves through a medium, but I think that's conduit. You understand the point? Let's not go through that sine tangent. We have that. You're using the car to transport yourself to your destination because you think it's lower cost to do so, and it's more efficient, and you want to do that with the lowest latency possible, always with the lowest latency possible, while following the laws and being safe, right? And always adapting to the scenario. That's the objective. Now, the source of discomfort, right? Verdi said number one, the objective, and what policy you have to follow, right? The contract. And I've learned about the contract policy actors side tangent, supply side tangent, from AI again, and the subject was computer science. But till now I haven't seen this in computer science. I've seen payload in computer science, but I haven't seen actor-receiver payload contract in particular. And this might be in economics as well. Example, game theory. It might be in game theory as well. And I think game theory is in computer science as well, if I'm not mistaken. Let's continue. the second part, which is the discomfort that you're feeling in this scenario, and that is the questioning from the shutting down of the group. We say, let's make this coherent. We ask a question, and then the instructor shuts down the question. Sometimes shuts down the question. Sometimes responds normally. Sometimes is agitated. That's the discomfort. And you name the facts. You're the actor. You're the receiver. You have a payload. You're asking the question, right? You're inquiring information from him. That's factual. You're inquiring information from him. Now let's keep it at that. Okay, let's try this another. It's structure number 2. Now number 3. The environment. What's the context in this scenario? Okay, the environment. You, the actor. You're going to this instructor to do what? To learn the car. And okay, what options do you have? Well, you could go to another instructor. But what about learning the car yourself? And how about learning the car yourself and not needing an instructor? Well, actually, maybe you could do that, but I'm not aware that you can do that to get your driver's license. Right? You might need to, from my understanding, you have to get the driver's license by passing an exam, but the only reason you're able to go for the exam, for the driving test, is if you got referred by a certified driving school, right, which is recorded in the database from the institute company that controls transport, right, in your country. And that is limited to the number of instructors that are in this database, right, are registered, licensed to be able to offer in lessons, to offer driving lessons, instructing students. And from our tests that we performed, that was the only instructor that was available. And we did email for 5. We did email 5 different places, and I think 6 or 7. We did email 6 or 7 places, and we did get responded by 3 places, 4 if we include our instructor, and we didn't get responded by 2 or 3 places. And from those 4 responses, only 1 of them was available. And here we are right now. And again, the objective, we stated the objective when going to the driving lessons, but let's say the objective before that, right, the step before that, the reason you're even driving in the first place, right? Well, this kind of relates to the second objective when you're at the driving lessons, which is to get to a place where you need to be, because you think that's the fastest and most efficient way possible, right? Therefore we can. But the objective that I assigned, right, let's keep this in reality, what my brain actually I assigned that I wanted to get a job. That's the only reason I wanted to drive. Simple as that. Now, has that objective changed? Yes. Do I think I'm doing this for a job now? Really, I'm doing it independence, right? With a car, I can drive to, let's say I want to build a MVP computer, right? Now I can go to a hardware store and an electronics store. See, I'm not even sure which stores there are because my brain hasn't seen all the different libraries, you could say, for this particular, for what you're going to build, right? But you could just go there, you don't need to, hey, wait, or call an Uber, or have two Ubers and then call again. And you can actually use your car to store materials, but that's not the big picture, right? Because I am leaving this country 100%. I will not stay here because the environment isn't, at least in the environment I'm in right now, isn't efficient for growth. At least to what I'm comparing to, right? I want to be in an environment where, let's see the facts. I'm in an environment where there's noise, construction workers, you can hear them. I'm in a house where I'm living with my parents and even brothers, and they're not aligned with my objective, right? And since they aren't aligned with my objective, I might have to delete some files. Since my PC almost has no space. Properties. Yeah, I can. Shouldn't take a lot of gigabytes. I think it would only take around 8 gigabytes. 5. And let me go back to what I was saying. Excuse my side tangent. I was talking about I'm living with people who aren't aligned with me, right? There's also cats and dogs in this house, which I do not appreciate, right? There's noise, and it's manufactured noise, right? Let me give you a short example, and let's use the female. I should call it, alright, let me just make this concrete. Let's say the mother, excuse me for doing this. Let's say the mother bought a cat, and based on feelings, said how cute the cat is, and then was even put the grids on the stairs so the cat doesn't fall. And I'm like, I'm trying to explain something where there's clear visual images in my head, but how can I explain this to another person? I would need to use more cognitive energy to be able to explain this clearly and coherently. I think it's better to get straight to the point. And drawing this would be, let's say, simpler, more effective probably. And you buy a cat and now it's making noise and it's affecting other people. And not only that, now you're complaining that you have a cat and you're complaining that you have to feed the cat. And really there's nothing stopping you from giving the cat away. There's nothing stopping you from giving the dog away. There's nothing stopping you from giving the other cat away. And that's another experience that my brain has, that many people, let's say unsuccessful people, like to distract themselves with, right? Animals, family, friends, going out, I have to do this, oh my car. And they're just not aware of the consequences that is going to, the consequences, aware of the consequences from those activities, from those actions. Dying, right? You're using your energy feeding something that doesn't give you any value. If you're using a cat for psychological purposes, then you need to learn about psychology, and you need to learn about your brain, and you need to write down on a piece of paper the facts. Okay, you need to write down the facts. That's what you need to do. It's always about facts. Whatever your brain is perceiving, it's a lie almost 100% of the time. What's the reason you're thinking about something that 20 years later, oh, now you see it from a different perspective? Oh, maybe because your brain is an actual system and it's measurable. The brain is measurable. What goes into your brain is measurable. Your brain just might not be aware of it, but I'm telling you it's measurable because I've tested it. And I've tested multiple different perceptions. I had perceptions where I'm looking, there's construction workers noise every 24 hours, every 6 hours a day. Every time you open the window, there's the window open, I need to open the window for circulation because, hey, the CO2 is actually making me more tired. And when I open the window, hey, there's all these inputs, all these buildings. And now my brain is thinking, look at that. And then I'm going out, I'm seeing the cat right in front of me, coming near me. I'm seeing the dog. Hey, this what? There's a bilingual family talking in another language, which has almost zero return of investment. They're using a language in a right. Speak English. You barely know English. What's the reason you're not speaking English to improve on that? You need to speak English. That's the main language. It's as simple as that. I will never ever speak my bilingual language unless it will be. That's going on a side tangent. And efficiency. The only reason I wouldn't speak my other language is because of efficiency. What's the reason I would speak that language if there's no reason to do so? It's not efficient to do so. Right? And for them, they probably have a reason to do so, to speak that language, right? If you're a worker in a particular country and people speak that language, guess what? You're going to speak that language, and now you're in this loop where you're speaking that language, you're getting money from speaking that language, and now you're in this cycle where you get money and use that money to eat food, and now you're getting all this dopamine from doing X, Y, and Z. It's very simple. It's very simple. It's measurable. When people say complex, oh, this is so complex, it's because you don't have the measurements. Yes, complex just means more interconnected pieces, right? More interconnected. It's more interconnected, there's more variables. There's more algorithms. You have the variables and you have the relationships and even activations of these relationships or functions of these variables based on different conditions. It's only not simple because your brain doesn't find it simple. But if you, it is simple. It's measurements. You're just measuring. And I might start doing the theory now and go to the exam for the driving. I got suggested to do that from the driving instructor, and I think it makes sense. Again, I was trying to close the video, but then I got into this thing that I had to explain to give more context, and even have a refresher for my own brain. And then maybe I will condense some of these videos and have short clips and then only have the value and coherent value extracted, which will make it clearer for me and for whoever's watching. And this should always be written down. Never just watch videos and consume, because that would be entertainment and we do not want entertainment. Never. Write them down, write the algorithms, go through them every single day. And yes, then you might stop doing the algorithms, but guess what? Now you have a process that when you need to get algorithms and start, hey, I'm based on the data or what I'm recording for whatever project you're doing, and let's say you have a schedule and you're doing your schedule, and let's say you're not seeing yourself progressing, and maybe it's time to go back to the algorithms and start rereading, and guess what? You're at a more forward place than you were before. Because now you know about the algorithms, you didn't have to create a new sheet. You have the algorithms and you can even add new algorithms and even refine algorithms based on the data you just received. Right after writing down those algorithms, because you went to explore, remember? You wrote down the algorithms, then you went to explore. You might have used a scientific method or did not. It depends on what you're doing and your awareness and your objectives and your current place based on your objectives. But I'm still assuming that the telos is not dying. Okay, that must be the final objective for every single human being on Earth, or any species really, because not dying, that unlocks everything, and you can think infinitely. And create infinitely and keep moving forward, keep growing. I think that's everything, right? Again, do I go to the summary for what we did, or will I go through another side tangent? What will the brain do? Or we could set a algorithm that I want to go through a side tangent. Okay, objective. Okay, we had part 1, objective, part 2, the source of discomfort, part 3, the environment. What's part 4? Source of discomfort, this is discomfort, environment. And we did have that part 2, the source of discomfort, we only had half of it. Right, you only did the facts. That sometimes, yes, it shuts down, sometimes does not. And I think the second part of that, the final part, would be testing. Testing. And remember that testing is going to which objectives? Your driving objective. And this is the minimal structure. You could add other objectives later. Refine the objective later. Right, testing example. Okay, you said sometimes shouts, sometimes doesn't shout. Okay, what's the destruction limit? But maybe you're testing, okay, I would ask this question. What if I ask this question 5 times but in different formats, right? Different variations. Or elaborate on it. Does he get mad in that? What if I say 5 questions but on different stuff? Does he get mad at that? And you start testing, right? And remember, you're not him, it's not him, it's not him, it's the brain. Okay, it's the brain. And remember, you're doing it to be able to drive and with the lowest latency while adhering to the laws and everything, and therefore your questions should be to improve your driving. That's what they should be aligned to. You also have to realize, okay, that's the end of it, right? Let's say that's the end of it. So we have 1, 2, and 3. We have 1 objective, 2 discomfort, the source of discomfort. 3, we have the environment, right? The contextual environment, the environment's context of the reason you're there for driving license and your options. Right? Could we say options is number 4? Well, the only reason you're in that environment is because of the options. Therefore, we could, let's say, really place the options part of the environment, and that's a simpler. It's a MVP, right? It's an MVP structure. One, two, three. And then number 4 would be, what's number 4? We did number 1, number 2 part 2, and we did number 3 environment, number 1 objective, number 2 discomfort source, which has part 1 listing the facts from the discomfort, right? The actor, receiver, the payload, contracts. Actually, or yeah, the contracts. And the contracts kind of relates with the environment options, right? Environment is number 3. And they relate because the contract, you're there to get the driver's license, and the options is you're limited to the instructions that are licensed to be able to refer you to the examination for the driver's license test. I think that is that everything? I think I've said this, is that everything, is that all, around 3 times or 4 times. 1 to 3. And now we were talking about, okay, what's number 4? We did the testing. I think that's it, right? Number 4 would be maybe evaluating everything, right? Input, output, feedback. Everything is feedback. Without feedback, and how are you going to improve your system? As you gather the data, then you have the feedback loop. You improve your system towards that objective that you have, right? And that's number 4. Number 4 would be, okay, you gather the data that you've had and the tests that you've done, and you improve, get better, and this applies to every single thing, every single activity that you do. There's always feedback. Feedback is biological as well. That is everything. That's it.